Commander Sarah Chun adjusted her scope one final time as she watched the old warehouse through the early morning mist. At 28, she had already broken more military records than most soldiers could dream of. But, standing here on this rooftop in downtown Seattle, listening to the radio chatter from her all-male team below, she knew that her biggest challenge wasn't the 12 armed terrorists holding innocent people inside that building. Her biggest challenge was getting her own team to trust her. Overwatch, this is Alpha Team Leader, came the gruff voice of Sergeant Mike Rodriguez through her earpiece. We're in position at the north entrance. Still think we should wait for backup from the male units. Sarah pressed her radio button. Negative, Alpha Team. We have confirmed intel that the hostiles plan to execute hostages in 30 minutes. We move now. She heard Rodriguez sigh heavily. Even through the static, his frustration was clear. Sarah had been commanding this specialized SEAL sniper unit for 6 months now, but some of her team members still questioned every decision she made. It didn't matter that she had graduated top of her class from SEAL training. It didn't matter that she could put 3 bullets through a quarter from 800 meters away. What mattered to them was that she was a woman in a job they thought belonged only to men. The warehouse below them held 16 civilian hostages taken during what started as a routine bank robbery. When the police arrived, the 3 robbers had panicked and fled to this abandoned building, calling in 9 more heavily armed friends. Now they had turned a simple robbery into a terrorist situation that threatened to explode across the entire city. Sarah's team consisted of 8 highly trained Navy SEALs, each one an expert in their field. There was Rodriguez, her second-in-command, who had 15 years of combat experience, but couldn't get past having a female commander. Tommy Ghost Williams was their explosives expert, a thin man from Louisiana who could make bombs out of household items, but always looked at Sarah like she might break under pressure. Then there was Marcus Tank Johnson, their heavy weapons specialist, who stood 6'4" and weighed 250 pounds of pure muscle. Tank had been vocal about his opinions regarding women in combat roles. Just last week during training, he had loudly told the other men that women didn't belong in special operations because they couldn't handle the physical and mental stress. The list continued with Danny Park, their communications expert, who always seemed surprised when Sarah's tactical decisions proved correct. Jake Spider Morrison was their climbing and infiltration specialist, who had 20 years of military experience and had never served under a female commander before Sarah. Finally, there were the twins, Alex and Chris Kowalski, both expert marksmen who had grown up hunting in Montana and could track a deer through a blizzard. They were polite to Sarah's face, but she had overheard them making jokes about having a mommy commander when they thought she wasn't listening. Despite their doubts, Sarah had chosen this particular team carefully. Each man was the best at what he did. Their problem wasn't skill or dedication to the mission. Their problem was accepting that their commanding officer happened to be a woman who could outshoot most of them and had proven her tactical abilities in 3 previous successful operations. As Sarah surveyed the warehouse through her scope, she mentally reviewed the intelligence they had gathered. The building was 4 stories tall with multiple entrances and windows. The hostiles had positioned themselves strategically throughout the structure, with lookouts posted at key points. The hostages were being held in a large room on the 2nd floor, according to thermal imaging from their reconnaissance drone. The terrorist leader was a man named Viktor Kozlov, a former military officer from Eastern Europe who had been kicked out of his country's armed forces for war crimes. He had somehow assembled this group of criminals and military rejects who were now demanding $10 million and safe passage out of the country. But intelligence suggested that Kozlov never intended to negotiate. He was planning to kill the hostages and escape in the chaos that would follow. "Bravo team, report," Sarah said into her radio. "Bravo team in position at South Entrance," came the voice of Tank Johnson. "Commander, I still think we need more time to study the building layout. This feels rushed." Sarah gritted her teeth. In her 6 months of commanding this unit, Tank had questioned her timing on every single mission. He never questioned the male commanders he had served under previously, but he seemed to think that Sarah needed to be twice as careful because she was a woman. "Tank, we've had the building under surveillance for 4 hours. Our drone has mapped every room, and we have confirmed intelligence about the hostiles' positions. We have a narrow window of opportunity here. Yes, ma'am, Tank replied, but his tone made it clear he disagreed with her assessment. Sarah knew that her team's lack of confidence in her leadership was becoming a serious problem. It wasn't just about their attitudes or hurt feelings. In combat situations, hesitation could get people killed. When team members second-guessed their commander's orders, even for a split second, it created dangerous delays that could cost lives. She had tried different approaches to win their respect. During training exercises, she had consistently outperformed most of them in shooting accuracy, physical fitness tests, and tactical problem-solving. She had studied every manual, memorized every regulation, and spent countless extra hours preparing for each mission. But, no matter what she achieved, some of her team members seemed determined to see her as an outsider who didn't belong. The worst part was that their doubts were starting to affect her own confidence. Sarah had always prided herself on being mentally strong, but constantly having to prove herself was exhausting. She found herself second-guessing decisions that she knew were correct, simply because she could feel her team's skepticism weighing on her. But today was going to be different. Today, she was going to show them exactly what she was capable of. All teams, this is Overwatch, Sarah said, using her call sign. Intelligence confirms that Kozlov is planning to start executing hostages in 25 minutes. We cannot wait for additional backup. The lives of 16 innocent people depend on us executing this operation perfectly. She paused, looking through her scope at the warehouse windows where she could see movement from the terrorists inside. Alpha Team will breach the north entrance and secure the ground floor. Bravo Team will breach the south entrance and clear the basement level. Charlie Team will provide covering fire and secure our extraction route. I will provide sniper support from this position and coordinate the overall operation. Understood, Overwatch, Rodriguez replied, though Sarah could hear the reluctance in his voice. As her teams moved into their final positions, Sarah reflected on how she had ended up in this situation. Growing up in a military family in San Diego, she had always been fascinated by precision shooting. Her father, a Marine Corps veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old. By the time she was in high school, she was winning state championships in marksmanship competitions. When she decided to join the Navy, everyone expected her to choose a traditional role like communications or intelligence. Instead, she set her sights on becoming a SEAL. The training had been brutal, designed to break down even the strongest candidates. Out of her class of 200 candidates, only 23 had graduated. Sarah had not only graduated but had finished with the highest overall scores in marksmanship, tactical planning, and leadership evaluations. Her first assignment had been with a SEAL team in Afghanistan, where she had quickly proven herself in combat. Over 3 deployments, she had completed 47 successful missions, including several high-profile operations that had eliminated key terrorist leaders. Her superiors had recognized her exceptional abilities and had recommended her for specialized sniper training. The advanced sniper course had been even more challenging than basic SEAL training. Sarah had competed against the military's best marksmen from all branches of service. The course included not only advanced shooting techniques, but also complex mathematical calculations for long-range shots, camouflage and concealment methods, and psychological training to maintain focus under extreme stress. Again, Sarah had graduated at the top of her class. Her instructors had noted that she had an almost supernatural ability to remain calm under pressure and could make impossible shots that other snipers wouldn't even attempt. They had recommended her for command training, which led to her current position as commander of this specialized unit. But all of her achievements and decorations seemed meaningless when she was facing a team that questioned her every decision based on her gender rather than her proven abilities. Overwatch, Alpha Team is ready to breach, Rodriguez reported. Bravo Team ready, Tank added. Charlie Team in position, confirmed Spider Morrison. Sarah took a deep breath and focused her attention on the warehouse. Through her scope, she could see 2 sentries posted at windows on the 3rd floor. Another hostile was visible on the 4th floor, apparently serving as a lookout for the entire operation. She had identified the locations of all 12 terrorists through careful observation and thermal imaging. 6 were with the hostages on the 2nd floor, including Kozlov himself. 3 were positioned on the ground floor near the entrances her teams would be breaching. 2 were on the 3rd floor providing overwatch, and One was on the fourth floor coordinating their defensive positions. The plan was complex but achievable. Her teams would breach simultaneously, creating confusion and forcing the terrorists to divide their attention. While they were distracted by the ground assault, Sarah would eliminate the overwatch positions from her sniper nest, preventing the terrorists from coordinating their defense effectively. But the plan would only work if her team trusted her leadership and followed her orders without hesitation. Any delay or second-guessing could result in casualties among both her team members and the innocent hostages. All teams, this is Overwatch. We execute in 60 seconds. Remember, speed and precision are everything. These hostiles are well-trained and heavily armed, but they don't expect us to hit them from multiple directions simultaneously. Alpha Team, your primary objective is to neutralize the ground floor hostiles and prevent them from reaching the second floor. Bravo Team, clear the basement and then move up to support Alpha Team. Charlie Team, maintain perimeter security and be ready for immediate medical evacuation if needed. Sarah adjusted her rifle position and began calculating the wind speed and direction. At this range, environmental factors could affect the trajectory of her bullets significantly. She needed to account for the morning breeze coming off the nearby harbor, the temperature differential between her position and the target, and even the slight movement of her building caused by traffic vibrations. 30 seconds, she announced. Through her scope, she could see that the terrorist on the fourth floor was holding a radio and appeared to be in communication with someone. If he was able to coordinate the defensive response when her teams breached, it could turn the entire operation into a disaster. Sarah had identified her target priorities carefully. The fourth floor lookout needed to be eliminated first to prevent him from calling out positions of her teams. Then, she would take out the two third-floor sentries who had direct lines of sight to both breach points. After that, she would shift her focus to supporting her teams as they cleared the building room by room. 10 seconds, she called out. Sarah's heart rate slowed as she entered the focused mental state that had made her one of the military's most effective snipers. Everything around her seemed to become quieter and clearer. The sounds of the city faded away, and her entire universe narrowed down to the view through her rifle scope. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute, execute, execute. The warehouse erupted in controlled chaos as her teams breached their assigned entrances simultaneously. Sarah could hear the distant sounds of flashbang grenades and automatic weapons fire as her men engaged the terrorists on the ground floor. Through her scope, she saw the fourth-floor lookout raise his radio to his mouth, preparing to coordinate the terrorist response. Sarah's crosshairs settled on the center of his chest, and she squeezed the trigger with the smooth, practiced motion that had become second nature after thousands of hours of training. The .308 caliber bullet covered the 400-meter distance in less than half a second. The terrorist dropped instantly, his radio clattering to the floor beside him. Sarah immediately shifted her aim to the third floor, where one of the sentries was leaning out of a window with an assault rifle, trying to get a clear shot at Alpha Team's entry point. Her second shot took him down before he could fire a single round. The remaining third-floor sentry had taken cover behind a concrete wall, but Sarah had studied the building layout carefully. She knew that there was a gap in the wall where a window had been boarded up, leaving just enough space for a precision shot. Sarah adjusted her aim slightly and waited. Combat psychology predicted that the terrorist would eventually lean out to look for targets, and she was prepared for that moment. Sure enough, after about 10 seconds, the man's head appeared in the gap. Sarah's third shot was perfect. In less than 30 seconds, she had eliminated all 3 Overwatch positions, exactly as planned. Now her teams could advance through the building without worrying about coordinated resistance from above. Overwatch to all teams, upper floor sentries are neutralized. You are clear to advance. Alpha Team copies. We have secured the ground floor, 2 hostiles down, Rodriguez reported. His voice carried a note of surprise and what might have been the beginning of respect. Bravo Team has cleared the basement. No hostiles present. Moving to support Alpha Team, Tank added. Sarah could hear the sounds of intense fighting from inside the warehouse as her teams advanced toward the second floor where the hostages were being held. The remaining terrorists were putting up fierce resistance, but they were now trapped between her advancing teams and had lost their ability to coordinate their defense. Through her scope, Sarah could see muzzle flashes from windows on the second floor as the terrorists tried to hold their positions. She knew that her teams were advancing up stairwells on opposite sides of the building, but the terrorists still had significant advantages in defensive positions and knowledge of the building layout. What happened next would determine whether this mission became a perfect success or a tragic failure. Sarah's 3 shots had been flawless, but the most dangerous part of the operation was just beginning. Her teams were about to face 6 desperate, well-armed terrorists who had nothing to lose and 16 innocent lives to use as leverage. Sarah kept her rifle trained on the second-floor windows, ready to provide support wherever her teams needed it most. But she also knew that the real test of her leadership was happening inside that building, where her team members were putting their lives on the line based on her tactical decisions. For the first time since taking command of this unit, Sarah felt that she was finally about to prove herself in a way that would silence all doubts about her abilities. The next few minutes would either establish her as a leader worthy of her team's complete trust, or they would confirm her critics' worst fears about women in combat leadership roles. But as Sarah maintained her overwatch position, scanning for targets and monitoring her team's progress through radio chatter, she felt completely calm and focused. This was exactly what she had trained for her entire career. This was her moment to show everyone, including herself, what she was truly capable of achieving. The gunfire from inside the warehouse intensified as Sarah's teams reached the second floor. Through her earpiece, she could hear the controlled breathing and tactical communications of her men as they prepared to breach the main hostage room. Overwatch, Alpha Team Leader, Rodriguez's voice crackled through the radio. "We have visual on the hostage room. 6 tangos inside with the civilians. They've barricaded the main entrance." Sarah adjusted her scope to get a better view of the second-floor windows. She could see movement behind makeshift barriers that the terrorists had constructed using office furniture and equipment. The situation was more complex than their initial intelligence had suggested. "Bravo Team Leader to Overwatch." Tank's voice came through clearly despite the background noise of gunfire. "We've encountered heavy resistance in the east stairwell. 2 team members have minor injuries, but we're still operational." Sarah's mind raced as she processed the tactical situation. The terrorists had proven to be better organized and more heavily armed than expected. Her teams were facing experienced fighters who had prepared defensive positions and were willing to fight to the death. "All teams, this is Overwatch. Intelligence update. The hostiles appear to have military training and have fortified their positions more extensively than anticipated. We need to adjust our approach." Through her scope, Sarah studied the layout of the second floor more carefully. The hostage room was large, probably an old conference room or office space that took up most of the floor. There were 3 windows facing her position, but heavy curtains and furniture blocked most of her view inside. Sarah knew that time was working against them. The longer this firefight continued, the more likely it was that the terrorists would start killing hostages. Kozlov had already proven that he was willing to use extreme violence, and being cornered would only make him more dangerous. "Alpha Team, what's your assessment of the barricade?" Sarah asked. "It's solid, Commander. Heavy desk, filing cabinets. Looks like they've been planning this defensive position. We could breach it with explosives, but there's high risk of civilian casualties with that approach." Sarah considered their options. A direct assault through the barricaded entrance would be extremely dangerous for both her teams and the hostages. But they needed to end this situation quickly before Kozlov decided that killing hostages was his only remaining option. "Ghost, what's your assessment for a precision breach?" Sarah asked their explosives expert. "I could place shaped charges to create a small opening, but I need to get close to the door. The hallway leading to that room is completely exposed to enemy fire." Sarah studied the building layout again, looking for alternative approaches. Through her scope, she noticed something that their earlier reconnaissance had missed. One of the second-floor windows had a fire escape platform that extended around the corner of the building. "Spider, this is Overwatch. Can you access the fire escape on the east side of the building?" Spider Morrison's voice came through immediately. "Affirmative, Commander. I can rappel down from the roof and access that platform. What do you need?" "I need eyes on the hostage situation from that window." We need real-time intelligence on the positions of both hostiles and civilians before we can plan our final assault. Roger that. Give me 5 minutes to get into position. While Spider moved to establish visual contact with the hostage room, Sarah continued to monitor the overall tactical situation. Her teams had successfully secured the lower floors of the building, but the main objective remained unaccomplished. 6 armed terrorists still controlled 16 innocent lives. Through her earpiece, she could hear the stress in her team members' voices. They were trained professionals, but this situation was testing their limits. The terrorists were putting up much stronger resistance than expected, and the risk to innocent lives was increasing with every minute that passed. Overwatch, this is Alpha Team Leader, Rodriguez reported. We're taking accurate sniper fire from inside the hostage room. These guys know what they're doing. Sarah realized that she needed to take more direct action to support her teams. From her current position, she had limited visibility into the hostage room, but she might be able to provide suppressive fire to allow her teams to advance. Alpha Team, can you mark the positions where you're receiving sniper fire? Affirmative. We have one hostile position behind an overturned table near the north window, and another one behind a filing cabinet near the east wall. Sarah studied those positions through her scope. The angles were challenging, and she would need to be extremely careful to avoid any risk to the hostages. But if she could eliminate or suppress those enemy snipers, her teams would have a much better chance of executing a successful breach. Spider, report on your progress, Sarah called. Almost in position, Commander. 60 seconds out. Sarah made a tactical decision that would demonstrate her abilities under pressure. Instead of waiting for perfect intelligence, she would use her exceptional marksmanship skills to provide immediate support for her teams. Alpha Team, I'm going to provide suppressive fire on the north window position. When I engage, advance to the door and prepare for breach. Commander, we don't have visual confirmation of hostage positions. This could be extremely dangerous, Rodriguez replied. Sarah understood his concern, but she also knew that hesitation at this moment could cost lives. The terrorists were well-positioned and heavily armed, and they would continue to inflict casualties on her teams unless she took action to disrupt their defensive positions. Alpha Team, trust me on this one. I have a clear shot angle that will minimize risk to civilians. Sarah adjusted her rifle position and began calculating the precise shot she needed to make. The target was partially concealed behind an overturned table, but she could see enough of his position to make an accurate shot. The angle was steep, and she would need to account for the downward trajectory of her bullet. More importantly, she had studied the building layout carefully enough to know that her bullet trajectory would pass well above the area where the hostages were most likely being held. The terrorists would naturally position their captives in the center of the room, away from windows where rescue teams might have direct lines of sight. Alpha Team, prepare to advance on my shot. Sarah controlled her breathing and settled her crosshairs on the target. Through her scope, she could see the terrorist's rifle barrel protruding from behind his makeshift barrier. She aimed slightly to the left of his position, knowing that her bullet would penetrate the thin wood of the overturned table. The shot rang out across the city morning, and Sarah saw the terrorist's rifle fall silent immediately. She had either eliminated him or forced him to take cover, either of which would allow her team to advance. Go, 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 Rodriguez shouted, and Sarah could hear Alpha Team moving rapidly down the hallway toward the hostage room. Before the remaining terrorists could react to her first shot, Sarah shifted her aim to the second sniper position behind the filing cabinet. This shot was even more challenging because the terrorist was better concealed, but Sarah had identified a small gap between the cabinet and the wall where she might be able to place an effective shot. Her second shot struck the filing cabinet with a metallic clang, and she saw the terrorist dive for better cover. Even if she hadn't eliminated him, she had disrupted his ability to target her advancing team. Overwatch, this is Spider. I have visual on the hostage room, came Morrison's voice. 16 civilians in the center of the room, hands zip-tied, all appear to be alive. For remaining hostiles, including one who appears to be the leader, they're using the hostages as human shields. Sarah felt a surge of relief that all the hostages were still alive, but the tactical situation remained extremely dangerous. Kozlov and His remaining men had positioned themselves behind the hostages, making any direct assault virtually impossible without risking civilian casualties. Spider, can you identify safe shot angles? Negative, Commander. The hostiles are keeping the civilians directly between themselves and all possible entry points. Any breach attempt will put the hostages at extreme risk. Sarah realized that they had reached the most critical moment of the operation. Her marksmanship had successfully eliminated 3 terrorists and allowed her teams to advance, but the remaining enemies had adapted their tactics to neutralize her team's advantages. Through her earpiece, she could hear Kozlov shouting in accented English from inside the hostage room. "We know you are outside. If you try to enter this room, we will kill all of the hostages. We want safe passage to the roof and a helicopter or everyone dies." Sarah knew that negotiating with Kozlov was not a realistic option. Intelligence had confirmed that he was a war criminal who had no intention of releasing the hostages regardless of what concessions were offered. His demands for helicopters and safe passage were just tactics to buy time while he prepared to eliminate all witnesses to his crimes. All teams, this is Overwatch. We cannot allow the hostiles to reach the roof or escape with hostages. We need to end this situation here and now. Sarah studied the building layout one more time, looking for any tactical advantage they might have missed. The hostage room had 3 windows, a single main entrance that was now covered by Alpha Team, and what appeared to be a ventilation shaft that ran along the ceiling. Ghost, can you access the ventilation system to place charges above the hostage room? Negative, Commander. The shaft is too small for human access, and any explosive charges placed there would definitely injure civilians. Sarah realized that conventional tactics were not going to work in this situation. The terrorists had effectively neutralized her team's advantages in training, equipment, and numbers by using the hostages as human shields. Any direct assault would result in innocent casualties. But Sarah had one advantage that the terrorists had not accounted for. Her exceptional marksmanship skills allowed her to make shots that other snipers would consider impossible. If she could find the right angles and opportunities, she might be able to eliminate the remaining terrorists without risking the hostages. Spider, I need detailed information on the positions and movements of all 4 remaining hostiles. Commander, they're staying behind cover and keeping the hostages between them and all windows and doors. I don't see any opportunity for clear shots. Sarah made a decision that would require every bit of skill and experience she had developed over her military career. Instead of continuing to wait for perfect tactical conditions, she would create her own opportunities through superior positioning and marksmanship. All teams, maintain your current positions and be ready to move immediately when I give the signal. Spider, keep providing real-time intelligence on hostile movements. Sarah began moving from her original sniper position to a new location that would give her different angles on the hostage room. She had identified a position on an adjacent rooftop that would allow her to see through 2 different windows simultaneously. The movement was risky because it meant leaving her secure position and potentially exposing herself to enemy fire. But Sarah knew that the current stalemate was unsustainable. Every minute that passed gave Kozlov more time to prepare for a mass execution of the hostages. As she rapidly but quietly moved across the rooftops, Sarah's mind was completely focused on the mathematical and tactical challenges ahead of her. She would need to identify split-second opportunities when the terrorists moved slightly out of position, and she would need to place her shots with absolute precision to avoid any risk to innocent lives. The new position offered her a view through the north and west windows of the hostage room simultaneously. Through her scope, she could see the hostages huddled together in the center of the room, exactly as Spider had described. For terrorists were positioned around the perimeter, using various pieces of furniture as cover while keeping the civilians between themselves and potential threats. Sarah began studying the movement patterns of each terrorist, looking for any predictable behaviors or momentary exposures that she could exploit. She noticed that one of the men near the west window kept checking his watch and glancing toward the door, suggesting that he was nervous about the tactical situation. Another terrorist near the north window was periodically raising his head slightly to look out at the surrounding buildings, apparently concerned about sniper threats. His behavior was creating brief moments when his head was exposed above the furniture he was using for cover. Kozlov himself was positioned directly behind the largest group of hostages, making him the most difficult target. But Sarah noticed that he was gesturing frequently as he spoke, apparently giving orders to his men or making threats. Those gestures occasionally moved his hands and arms outside the protective barrier created by the hostages. Sarah realized that she might be able to eliminate all 4 terrorists if she could time her shots perfectly and move quickly between targets. It would require unprecedented precision and speed, but it was the only tactical option that offered hope for saving all the hostages. All teams, this is Overwatch. I am repositioning for multiple precision shots. When I engage, be ready for immediate breach and hostage evacuation. Sarah settled into her new firing position and began the mental preparation that had made her one of the military's most effective snipers. She controlled her breathing, calculated environmental factors, and visualized the sequence of shots she would need to make. The next few minutes would determine whether her reputation as an exceptional marksman was justified, or whether her team's doubts about her capabilities were correct. Sarah had never attempted anything as technically challenging as what she was about to try, but she knew that the lives of 16 innocent people depended on her ability to perform under ultimate pressure. Sarah's breathing steadied as she entered the zone of absolute focus that separated elite snipers from ordinary marksmen. Through her scope, she could see every detail of the hostage room with crystal clarity. The terrorists were positioned exactly as Spider had reported, but Sarah was beginning to notice subtle patterns in their movements that could provide the opportunity she needed. The terrorist near the west window was indeed checking his watch regularly, and each time he did so, he shifted his weight slightly forward. This movement exposed about 3 inches of his shoulder above the overturned desk he was using for cover. The exposure lasted approximately 2 seconds before he settled back into his protected position. Sarah timed this pattern through 3 complete cycles, confirming that it occurred every 45 seconds. The man was clearly nervous about their timeline, probably expecting backup that would never arrive. His anxiety was creating the tactical opportunity that Sarah needed. The second terrorist, positioned near the north window, was even more predictable. Every 30 seconds, he raised his head to scan the surrounding buildings for sniper threats. He would remain exposed for about 3 seconds before ducking back behind his barrier. Sarah realized that his concern about snipers was actually making him more vulnerable to sniper fire. The third terrorist was more disciplined, maintaining his position behind a filing cabinet without unnecessary movement. But Sarah noticed that when Kozlov spoke to him, he would turn his head slightly to listen, creating a brief profile exposure. This was the least predictable of her potential targets, but it was still a viable shot opportunity. Kozlov himself remained the most challenging target. He stayed directly behind the hostages, using them as human shields while he coordinated his remaining men. But Sarah had noticed that when he gestured to give orders, his left hand and part of his forearm would extend beyond the protective barrier created by the civilians. More importantly, Sarah had identified a potential solution to the Kozlov problem. If she could eliminate the other 3 terrorists quickly enough, Kozlov would be forced to react to the sudden change in his tactical situation. That reaction might create the exposure she needed for a final shot. The plan was extremely risky and would require perfect execution. Sarah would need to make 4 precision shots in rapid succession, moving between targets faster than any of them could react to the threat. Even more challenging, each shot would need to be placed with absolute accuracy to avoid any risk to the hostages. Sarah had never attempted anything this technically demanding, but she had trained for exactly this type of scenario. Her instructors at sniper school had emphasized that elite marksmen needed to be prepared for situations where conventional tactics would not work. They had drilled her on rapid target engagement and precision shooting under extreme pressure. Spider, I need continuous updates on hostile positions. Do not break radio silence unless you see an immediate threat to hostages. Roger, Overwatch. All hostiles maintaining positions. Hostages appear unharmed. Sarah checked her rifle one final time, ensuring that every adjustment was perfect. She had loaded her magazine with match-grade ammunition that she had personally tested for consistency and accuracy. The rifle itself was a custom-built .308 that she had been using for over 2 years, and she knew its characteristics intimately. Environmental conditions were nearly perfect for precision shooting. The wind had died down to almost nothing, temperature was stable, and the morning light provided excellent visibility without creating problematic shadows or glare. Sarah positioned herself to engage the west window target first. This terrorist's predictable timing made him the logical starting point for her sequence. She would eliminate him during his next watch-checking movement, then rapidly shift to the north window target, followed by the filing cabinet position, and, finally, Kozlov himself. The entire sequence would need to be completed in less than 10 seconds to prevent the surviving terrorists from reacting effectively. Sarah's rifle was semi-automatic, capable of rapid follow-up shots, but the real challenge would be acquiring and engaging each target with the precision necessary to avoid civilian casualties. Overwatch to all teams. I am preparing to engage multiple targets in rapid sequence. On my signal, execute immediate breach and secure all hostages. Sarah could hear the tension in her team's radio acknowledgments. They understood that she was attempting something extraordinarily difficult, and their own actions would need to be perfectly timed to support her efforts. Through her scope, Sarah watched the west window terrorist check his watch again. She began counting down from 45 seconds, timing his next movement. At 30 seconds, she settled her crosshairs on the precise point where his shoulder would appear. At 15 seconds, she controlled her breathing and began applying pressure to the trigger. The terrorist shifted forward right on schedule, exposing his shoulder exactly as Sarah had predicted. Her first shot took him down instantly, the bullet striking center mass and eliminating him before he could call out a warning to his companions. Sarah immediately pivoted her rifle toward the north window, where the second terrorist was due to make his scanning movement in 20 seconds. She had gained precious time by eliminating her first target ahead of his schedule, but she needed to maintain her rapid pace to keep the remaining terrorists from coordinating their response. As she settled her crosshairs on the north window position, Sarah saw the terrorist begin to raise his head right on time. Her second shot was fired before he had fully exposed himself, and the bullet found its target perfectly. 2 down, 2 to go. Sarah swung her rifle toward the filing cabinet position, knowing that this target would be the most challenging because his movements were less predictable. She could see him crouched behind his cover, but he had not yet reacted to the fact that his 2 companions had been eliminated. Through her scope, Sarah watched Kozlov begin speaking to the filing cabinet terrorist, apparently giving him new orders. As expected, the man turned his head slightly to listen, creating the profile exposure that Sarah had been waiting for. Her third shot was the most technically difficult of the sequence, requiring precise placement through a narrow gap between the filing cabinet and the wall. But Sarah's training and experience paid off, and the bullet found its target exactly as planned. 3 down, 1 to go. Kozlov suddenly realized that something was wrong. Sarah could see him looking around frantically, trying to understand why his men had stopped responding. In his panic, he began moving more erratically, which was exactly what Sarah had hoped would happen. As Kozlov turned to check on his men, he momentarily forgot to keep the hostages between himself and the windows. Sarah saw her opportunity as he exposed his upper torso while looking toward the filing cabinet position. Her fourth shot was fired with the same precision as the previous 3, and Kozlov dropped immediately. 4 targets down in 8 seconds. All teams, hostiles are down. Execute breach and secure hostages immediately. Sarah heard her teams moving rapidly into the hostage room as she maintained overwatch through her scope. She watched Alpha Team breach the barricaded entrance while Bravo Team provided backup, and Charlie Team secured the perimeter. Overwatch, Alpha Team leader. Room is secure, all hostiles down, all hostages alive and unharmed. Sarah felt a surge of relief and satisfaction as she confirmed that her unprecedented shooting performance had achieved its objective. 16 innocent lives had been saved, and her team had successfully completed one of the most challenging missions any of them had ever faced. But more than that, she had finally proven her capabilities in a way that could not be questioned or dismissed. Her team had just witnessed marksmanship and tactical leadership that exceeded anything they had previously experienced. Outstanding work, all teams, Sarah said into her radio. Begin hostage evacuation procedures and prepare for debrief. As Sarah began packing up her rifle, she could hear the changed tone in her team's radio communications. The skepticism and doubt that had characterized their previous interactions were completely gone, replaced by genuine respect and admiration. "Commander," came Rodriguez's voice, "I have never seen shooting like that in 15 years of military service. 4 precision shots in 8 seconds with 0 civilian casualties. That was absolutely incredible." Similar comments were coming from the other team members as they processed what they had just witnessed. Tank Johnson, who had been the most vocal critic of female leadership, was describing Sarah's performance as impossible and superhuman. Spider Morrison, still in his Overwatch position at the fire escape, had observed the entire sequence through his own scope. "Commander, I watched every one of those shots. The angles you were working with, the speed of target acquisition, the precision under pressure. I have never seen anything like it." Sarah allowed herself a moment to appreciate these comments, knowing that her team's respect had been earned through demonstrated excellence rather than simply demanded through rank or regulation. But she also knew that this mission represented just the beginning of what would hopefully be a long and successful partnership with these men. As she made her way down from her sniper position, Sarah reflected on the lessons learned from this operation. The terrorists had indeed been more organized and better trained than intelligence had suggested, but her team had adapted effectively to the changing tactical situation. More importantly, her team had learned to trust her judgment even when facing unprecedented challenges. Rodriguez had questioned her timing initially, but he had followed her orders precisely when it mattered most. Tank had expressed doubts about her tactical decisions, but he had executed his assignments flawlessly. The communication between team members had been professional and effective throughout the operation, despite their previous concerns about her leadership. When the situation became most dangerous, everyone had focused on the mission rather than their personal opinions about gender roles in combat. Sarah knew that this level of trust and cooperation would make her team significantly more effective in future operations. Combat units performed best when every member had complete confidence in their leader's abilities and judgment. Today's mission had established that confidence in a way that no amount of training exercises could have achieved. As Sarah reached the warehouse, she could see her teams efficiently evacuating the hostages and processing the crime scene. Medical personnel were checking each civilian for injuries, while intelligence specialists were gathering evidence from the terrorist positions. The hostages themselves were remarkably calm, considering their ordeal. Several of them approached Sarah to thank her personally for the rescue, having been told by her team members that she was the sniper who had eliminated their captors. One elderly man, a bank customer who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, shook Sarah's hand and said, "Young lady, I served in Vietnam, and I have never seen anything like what you just did. Those men had us convinced we were going to die, and then, suddenly, they were all down, and you folks were getting us out of there. Thank you for saving our lives." Similar sentiments were expressed by the other hostages, who seemed amazed that their rescue had been executed so flawlessly and with such precision. None of them had been injured during the operation, and most seemed more grateful than traumatized by their experience. Sarah's commanding officer, Colonel James Mitchell, arrived on scene within an hour of the operation's completion. He had been monitoring the tactical situation from headquarters and was eager to debrief the team on their performance. "Commander Chun," he said as he approached her, "I received real-time reports of your shooting performance from multiple observers. 4 precision eliminations in 8 seconds with 0 civilian casualties represents some of the finest marksmanship I have ever seen documented." Colonel Mitchell was a decorated veteran with 30 years of military experience, including multiple combat deployments and command of special operations units. His opinion carried significant weight throughout the military community. "Your tactical decisions throughout this operation demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership we need in special operations," he continued. "You adapted to changing intelligence, coordinated complex team movements, and executed a resolution that saved every innocent life while eliminating all hostile threats." Sarah appreciated the colonel's recognition, but she was most interested in her team's assessment of the operation. These were the men who would be accompanying her on future missions, and their confidence in her abilities would be crucial to their continued success. Rodriguez approached her as the formal debrief was concluding. "Commander, I owe you an apology. I questioned your decisions today based on my own biases rather than your proven abilities. What you accomplished in that warehouse was the finest piece of tactical leadership I have ever witnessed." He paused, clearly struggling with his own preconceptions about women in combat roles. "I have served with some exceptional officers over the years, but I have never seen anyone perform under pressure the way you did today. You have earned my complete respect and trust." Similar conversations took place with the other team members throughout the afternoon as they processed the day's events. Tank Johnson admitted that he had been wrong about women's capabilities in special operations, acknowledging that Sarah had proven herself beyond any possible doubt. The twins, Alex and Chris Kowalski, were particularly impressed by Sarah's mathematical precision and tactical planning. They had grown up hunting and understood the technical challenges involved in long-range shooting, making them especially qualified to appreciate what Sarah had accomplished. Ghost Williams, the explosives expert, commented on Sarah's decision to use marksmanship rather than explosives to resolve the hostage situation. "Commander, you chose the right tool for the job and executed it perfectly. Explosives would have been much riskier for the civilians, but I never imagined that anyone could make those shots under those conditions." Spider Morrison, who had observed the entire sequence from his position on the fire escape, provided the most detailed analysis of Sarah's performance. "Commander, I have been in special operations for 20 years, and I have worked with some of the finest snipers in the military. What you did today was beyond anything I thought was humanly possible." As the day concluded and her team prepared to return to base, Sarah realized that she had fundamentally changed the dynamics of her unit. The doubts and skepticism that had characterized her first 6 months as commander had been completely eliminated by 4 perfect shots fired in 8 seconds. But more than that, she had proven to herself that she was capable of performing at the highest levels under ultimate pressure. The technical challenges of today's mission had pushed her abilities to their absolute limits, and she had risen to meet those challenges flawlessly. Sarah knew that future missions would bring new tests and challenges, but she was confident that her team would face them together with complete mutual trust and respect. Today had transformed 8 individual operators into a truly cohesive special operations unit. 3 months after the warehouse operation, Sarah's reputation had spread throughout the special operations community. Military personnel from around the world were requesting copies of the tactical report from her hostage rescue mission, and her shooting performance had become a case study taught at sniper schools across multiple branches of service. But the real change was in her team's performance. The 8 men who had once questioned her every decision now operated with complete confidence in her leadership. Their mission success rate had improved dramatically, and they had earned recognition as one of the most effective special operations units in the Navy. Sarah was reviewing intelligence files in her office when her secure phone rang with an urgent priority call from Admiral Rebecca Torres, commander of Naval Special Warfare Command. "Commander Chin, we have a situation that requires your team's immediate deployment. How quickly can you be ready to move?" Sarah checked her watch. It was 1,430 hours on a Tuesday afternoon, and her team was conducting routine training exercises at the base. "Admiral, we can be mission ready within 2 hours. What's the situation?" "We have a terrorist cell that has taken over an offshore oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico. 43 workers are being held hostage, and the terrorists are threatening to blow up the platform if their demands are not met. The environmental and economic damage from such an explosion would be catastrophic." Admiral Torres continued with the tactical briefing. "Intelligence indicates that this is connected to the same organization that was responsible for the warehouse incident you resolved 3 months ago. They appear to have specifically requested that your team not be assigned to this mission." Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction at that information. The terrorist organization clearly remembered her team's capabilities and was trying to avoid facing them again. But their request would obviously be ignored. "Admiral, what's the timeline for this operation?" The terrorists have given us 12 hours to meet their demands, but intelligence suggests they plan to detonate the platform regardless of any negotiations. We need to resolve this situation within 6 hours to ensure the safety of the hostages and prevent an environmental disaster. Sarah was already mentally preparing her team for the mission. An offshore platform presented unique tactical challenges that were very different from urban operations like the warehouse rescue. They would need to approach by sea or air, probably under hostile fire, and then clear a complex industrial facility with multiple levels and numerous potential hiding spots. Admiral, what intelligence do we have on the number and composition of the terrorist force? Preliminary reports indicate 12 to 15 armed hostiles, but these numbers are unconfirmed. The platform's communication systems have been compromised, so we're working with limited information from the last radio contact before the takeover. Admiral Torres paused before continuing. Commander, I need to be direct with you about something. There are some senior officers who believe this mission should be assigned to a larger force with more conventional capabilities. The terrorist organization has specifically mentioned your team, and there's concern that this might be a trap designed to target you personally. Sarah understood the Admiral's concern, but she also knew that her team was uniquely qualified for this type of operation. Their recent success had proven their ability to handle complex hostage situations with minimal collateral damage. Admiral, with respect, my team has demonstrated capabilities that make us the logical choice for this mission. If the terrorists are specifically trying to avoid facing us, that suggests they remember how effectively we operate. Agreed, Commander. That's exactly why I'm assigning this mission to your unit. But I want you to be aware of the political dimensions of this deployment. There will be significant attention on your team's performance, both positive and negative. Admiral Torres was referring to the ongoing debates within the military about women in combat leadership roles. Sarah's success had generated considerable discussion, with some officials arguing that her achievements prove the value of gender integration in special operations, while others claimed that her performance was an exception rather than a rule. Admiral understood. My team will focus on the mission and let our results speak for themselves. Excellent. Your transportation and equipment will be ready for departure in 90 minutes. Additional intelligence updates will be provided during your flight to the operational area. Sarah immediately contacted Rodriguez to assemble the team for urgent mission briefing. Within 30 minutes, all 8 team members were gathered in the secure briefing room, reviewing preliminary intelligence on the oil platform situation. The platform, designated Gulf Star 7, was located approximately 150 miles south of Louisiana in deep water. It was a large facility with accommodation for 60 workers, extensive drilling equipment, and significant quantities of volatile materials that could cause massive explosions if detonated. Gentlemen, we're looking at a complex target with multiple tactical challenges, Sarah began as she displayed satellite images of the platform on the briefing room screen. The facility is essentially a small city built on stilts in the middle of the ocean. Tank studied the images carefully. Commander, how do we approach without being detected? This platform has 360-degree visibility for miles in every direction. Sarah had been considering the same question. Intel suggests the terrorists have positioned lookouts at key points around the platform, but they probably don't have sophisticated radar equipment. We'll be approaching by helicopter at low altitude to minimize our detection profile. Spider raised his hand. What's the plan for getting onto the platform itself? Those structures are designed to prevent unauthorized access. Sarah pointed to several locations on the satellite images. The platform has multiple potential entry points, including maintenance platforms at water level, helicopter landing pads, and external stairways. We'll need to coordinate a multi-point assault to prevent the terrorists from concentrating their defenses. The intelligence officer from Naval Special Warfare Command arrived to provide additional briefing materials. Captain Lisa Martinez had coordinated several similar operations and understood the unique challenges of offshore missions. The terrorists took control of the platform at 0630 this morning during the shift change, Captain Martinez reported. They appear to have inside knowledge of the facility's security procedures and worker routines. She displayed detailed layout diagrams of the platform's multiple levels. The hostages are believed to be held in the main accommodation block on level 3, but this has not been confirmed. The terrorists have control of the drilling operations center and have threatened to trigger an explosion that would destroy the entire facility. Rodriguez studied the structural diagrams. Captain, what's the estimated yield of an explosion if they detonate the drilling equipment and fuel supplies? Conservative estimates suggest an explosion equivalent to several tons of TNT, with a fireball that would be visible from shore. The environmental damage from burning crude oil would affect hundreds of miles of coastline. Sarah realized that this mission carried implications far beyond the immediate hostage situation. Failure to prevent the platform's destruction would result in one of the worst environmental disasters in Gulf of Mexico history. Captain, do we have any intelligence on the specific terrorist organization responsible for this attack? Affirmative. NSA intercepts have identified communications linking this operation to the same group you encountered in the warehouse mission. The leader appears to be Dmitry Volkov, Viktor Kozlov's brother. Sarah felt a chill as she processed this information. The warehouse operation had been more than just a successful mission. It had apparently created a personal vendetta that was now escalating into an even more dangerous situation. Intelligence suggests that Dmitry Volkov has been planning this operation specifically to draw your team into a confrontation. Captain Martinez continued. He appears to blame your team for his brother's death and wants revenge. Ghost whistled softly. So this is definitely a trap designed specifically for us. Sarah looked around the briefing room at her team members. She could see concern in their faces, but not fear. These men had complete confidence in her leadership and their own abilities, even when facing a situation designed to exploit their potential weaknesses. Gentlemen, the fact that this is a trap doesn't change our tactical approach. We still need to rescue 43 innocent hostages and prevent an environmental catastrophe. The terrorist motivations are irrelevant to our mission planning. Sarah was right, but she also understood that Volkov's personal vendetta would make this operation more dangerous than a typical hostage rescue. The terrorists would be expecting her team's tactics and would have prepared countermeasures specifically designed to neutralize their advantages. The helicopter flight to the operational area took 2 hours, during which Sarah and her team continued studying intelligence updates and refining their tactical plan. The platform was even larger and more complex than the satellite images had suggested, with dozens of potential hiding spots and defensive positions. As they approached the target area, Sarah could see Gulf Star 7 on the horizon. The massive structure rose out of the ocean like a small city, with multiple levels, towers, and industrial equipment, creating a complex three-dimensional battlefield. Through her headset, Sarah received final intelligence updates from the command center. Overwatch, this is Control. Latest thermal imaging shows approximately 14 hostiles positioned throughout the platform. Hostages appear to be concentrated in the accommodation block as expected. Sarah acknowledged the information and made final adjustments to their assault plan. Her team would fast rope onto the platform at 3 different points simultaneously, creating confusion and preventing the terrorists from coordinating their defensive response. All teams, this is Overwatch. We insert in 10 minutes. Remember, this platform contains enough explosive material to level a city block. Precision and speed are absolutely critical. As their helicopter approached the insertion point, Sarah could see armed figures moving on the platform's upper levels. The terrorists were clearly aware of their approach and were preparing to defend their positions. But Sarah's team had faced similar challenges before, and their recent success had given them unshakable confidence in their abilities. More importantly, they had learned to trust Sarah's tactical judgment completely, even when facing situations that seemed impossible. Alpha Team, you'll insert on the helicopter landing pad and secure the upper levels. Bravo Team will fast rope to the drilling platform and secure the operations center. I'll provide overwatch and sniper support from the helicopter until the LZ is secure. Sarah had decided to remain in the helicopter initially to provide covering fire for her team's insertion. The platform's open design would make her teams vulnerable during their approach, but her sniper rifle could suppress terrorist positions and allow her men to reach cover safely. Charlie Team will fast rope to the accommodation level and begin hostage rescue operations immediately after Alpha and Bravo teams have secured their objectives. The plan was aggressive and would require perfect timing, but Sarah knew that her team was capable of executing complex operations under extreme pressure. Their previous mission had proven that they could adapt to unexpected challenges and achieve impossible objectives through superior skill and coordination. As the helicopter reached the insertion point, Sarah could see muzzle flashes from terrorist positions throughout the platform. The enemy was well-positioned and heavily armed, but they had made the mistake of challenging the most effective special operations team in the Navy. All teams, this is Overwatch. Execute insertion in 30 seconds. Show these guys what happens when they threaten innocent lives. Sarah settled her rifle into firing position as her teams prepared to fast rope onto one of the most dangerous targets they had ever faced. But she felt completely confident in their abilities and their chances of success. After all, they had already proven that they could accomplish the impossible. The helicopter roared over the Gulf Star 7 platform as Sarah positioned her rifle for covering fire. Through her scope, she could see at least 6 armed terrorists on the upper levels, already taking aim at the insertion points where her teams would be most vulnerable. All teams, Overwatch has visual on multiple hostiles. Engaging now to clear your landing zones. Sarah's first shot eliminated a terrorist who was positioned to fire directly at Alpha Team's insertion point. Her second shot took down another hostile who had established a shooting position overlooking the drilling platform where Bravo Team would be landing. As her teams began their fast rope descent, Sarah continued providing precision fire to suppress the terrorist positions. The platform's industrial equipment created numerous hiding spots, but Sarah's elevated position in the helicopter allowed her to identify targets that would be invisible to her teams on the ground. Alpha Team on deck, moving to secure upper levels, Rodriguez reported as his team touched down on the helicopter landing pad. Bravo Team landing now, receiving heavy fire from Drilling Operations Center, Tank called out. Sarah could see the situation developing rapidly below her. The terrorists were well organized and had prepared defensive positions that maximized their advantages. But her teams were moving with the precision and coordination that had made them legendary within the special operations community. Through her scope, Sarah identified a terrorist who was maneuvering to flank Alpha Team's position. Her shot eliminated the threat before Rodriguez and his men even realized they were being targeted. Charlie Team, prepare for insertion. Your landing zone is partially secured, but expect contact immediately upon touchdown. As Charlie Team prepared to fast rope to the accommodation level where the hostages were being held, Sarah noticed increased activity in the Drilling Operations Center. Through her scope, she could see someone who appeared to be working with electronic equipment, possibly preparing to detonate the platform's explosive materials. Control, this is Overwatch. I have visual on possible bomb preparation activity in the Drilling Operations Center. Recommend immediate prioritization of that target. Roger, Overwatch. Bravo Team is moving to secure drilling operations now. Sarah watched Tank and his team advance through the industrial maze of the drilling platform. The terrorists had positioned themselves expertly, using the facility's equipment and structures to create overlapping fields of fire that would challenge even the most skilled assault teams. But Tank's team had learned to trust Sarah's Overwatch completely. As they moved through the dangerous areas, Sarah eliminated threats that they couldn't even see, clearing their path with precision shots that seemed to anticipate the terrorists' every move. Overwatch, Alpha Team. We have secured the upper levels and are moving toward the accommodation block to support hostage rescue. Roger, Alpha Team. Be advised, Charlie Team is beginning their insertion now. Sarah watched Charlie Team fast rope onto the accommodation level, immediately coming under fire from multiple directions. The terrorists had clearly expected this approach and had prepared a concentrated defensive position to prevent any rescue attempt. Spider and his team took cover behind industrial equipment as bullets ricocheted around their landing zone. Through her scope, Sarah could see at least 4 terrorist positions that were pinning down Charlie Team and preventing them from advancing toward the hostages. Sarah rapidly engaged each terrorist position in sequence, her shots coming so quickly that the terrorists couldn't coordinate their response. In less than 15 seconds, she had eliminated 4 targets and cleared the way for Charlie Team's advance. Outstanding shooting, Overwatch. Charlie team is moving to secure hostages now. As her teams advanced through the platform, Sarah realized that Dmitry Volkov had indeed prepared this operation specifically to counter her team's tactics. The terrorists were positioned to exploit the industrial environment and had clearly studied the reports from the warehouse operation. But Volkov had made a crucial mistake. He had planned his defenses based on conventional special operations tactics, not accounting for Sarah's extraordinary marksmanship abilities. Her precision fire from the helicopter was systematically destroying his carefully prepared defensive positions. Through her scope, Sarah saw a figure on the drilling operations platform who appeared to be directing the terrorist response. Based on intelligence photos, she believed this was Dmitry Volkov himself, attempting to coordinate his men's defense while preparing to detonate the platform. The shot angle was extremely challenging because Volkov was partially concealed behind drilling equipment, and the helicopter's movement made precision aiming difficult. But Sarah had faced similar challenges during the warehouse operation and had learned to adapt her shooting technique to unstable platforms. Sarah signaled the helicopter pilot to steady their position for a critical shot. As the aircraft stabilized, she acquired her target and calculated the complex ballistics required for a shot from a moving helicopter to a partially concealed target 200 meters below. The shot was perfect, and Dmitry Volkov dropped immediately. Sarah watched his men react with confusion and panic as they realized their leader had been eliminated by the same sniper who had killed his brother 3 months earlier. All teams, this is Overwatch. Primary hostile leader is down. Continue mission execution. With their leader eliminated and their defensive positions systematically destroyed by Sarah's precision fire, the remaining terrorists began to lose cohesion. Some attempted to surrender, while others fell back to secondary positions deeper within the platform structure. Overwatch, Bravo team has secured the drilling operations center. We found extensive explosive charges connected to the platform's fuel systems, but the detonation sequence was interrupted when the leader was eliminated. Sarah felt enormous relief at that report. The environmental catastrophe had been prevented, but the mission was far from over. Her team still needed to rescue 43 hostages and secure the remaining terrorists scattered throughout the platform. Charlie team, report on hostage situation. We have visual on the hostages in the main accommodation room. 38 are secured and unharmed. 5 are unaccounted for, possibly held in secondary locations. Sarah realized that some of the hostages might be being held by the surviving terrorists as human shields, similar to the warehouse situation. She began scanning the platform through her scope, looking for any signs of terrorist positions that might contain the missing civilians. All teams, we have 5 missing hostages. Sweep and clear all secondary positions, but be prepared for human shield scenarios. As her teams began systematically clearing the platform, Sarah continued to provide overwatch from the helicopter. Her elevated position allowed her to see movement and positions that would be invisible to her teams on the ground level. Through her scope, she noticed activity in what appeared to be a maintenance shed on one of the lower levels. The structure was small and isolated from the main platform areas, making it a logical location for terrorists to hold hostages while attempting to escape. All teams, possible hostile position in maintenance shed, level 2, southwest section. Recommend caution, likely location for remaining hostages. Rodriguez's voice came through immediately. Alpha team, moving to investigate. Request overwatch support. Sarah adjusted her position to get the best possible viewing angle on the maintenance shed. The structure had only one window and a single entrance, making it both a perfect hiding spot and a potential death trap for anyone inside. As Alpha team approached the shed, Sarah could see movement through the small window. Her scope revealed 2 armed terrorists inside the structure, along with what appeared to be several bound figures who were likely the missing hostages. The tactical situation was extremely delicate. The shed was too small for a conventional assault, and any gunfire inside the confined space would almost certainly result in hostage casualties. But the terrorists inside were trapped and becoming increasingly desperate. Alpha team, I have visual on 2 hostiles and approximately 5 hostages inside the maintenance shed. Conventional breach is not recommended due to civilian casualties risk. Rodriguez paused as he considered their options. Overwatch, can you get clean shots through the window? Sarah studied the angles carefully. The window was small and partially obscured by equipment, but she could see enough of the interior to identify potential shot opportunities. However, the proximity of the hostages to their captors made any shooting extremely dangerous. Possible, but high risk to civilians. Recommend negotiation attempt first. As Alpha Team established positions around the maintenance shed, one of the terrorists inside began shouting in accented English. "We know you are outside. We have 5 American hostages. If you try to enter, we will kill them all." Sarah recognized the tactical pattern from her previous encounters with this terrorist organization. They were attempting to create a standoff situation that would allow them to escape while using the hostages as leverage. Through her scope, Sarah continued studying the situation inside the shed. The terrorists were positioned with their backs to the window, using the hostages as human shields between themselves and the main entrance. This positioning was tactically sound for preventing a conventional assault, but it created a potential opportunity for precision shots from her elevated position. Sarah realized that she might be able to eliminate both terrorists simultaneously if she could time her shots perfectly. The 2 men were standing close together, and her angle from above would allow her to engage them without risking the hostages who were positioned on the floor below the terrorists' line of fire. Alpha Team, maintain your positions and be ready for immediate hostage evacuation. I may have a solution. Sarah signaled the helicopter pilot to position the aircraft for the most stable shooting platform possible. The shot she was contemplating would require absolutely perfect precision, with no margin for error. Through her scope, she could see the terrorists arguing with each other, apparently disagreeing about their next course of action. One was demanding that they kill the hostages immediately, while the other wanted to use them for negotiating safe passage off the platform. Their argument was creating movement and distraction that might provide the opportunity Sarah needed. She settled her crosshairs on the first terrorist and began calculating the precise timing required for a double shot that would eliminate both threats without endangering the hostages. The technical challenge was enormous. Sarah would need to fire 2 shots in rapid succession, adjusting her aim between targets while accounting for the helicopter's movement and the confined space inside the maintenance shed. But Sarah had proven during the warehouse operation that she could accomplish shooting feats that other marksmen considered impossible. Her training and natural abilities had been honed to the point where she could perform under any conditions. As the terrorists continued their heated argument, Sarah saw her opportunity. Both men had turned slightly away from the hostages, creating clear shot angles that would eliminate them without risking civilian casualties. Sarah fired twice in rapid succession, both bullets finding their targets perfectly. The terrorists dropped instantly, and she could see the hostages looking up in confusion and relief as Alpha Team breached the shed to secure them. All hostages secured, all threats eliminated, Rodriguez reported. "Commander, that was absolutely incredible shooting. I don't know how you made those shots from a moving helicopter into that confined space." As her teams completed the platform clearing operations and prepared the hostages for evacuation, Sarah reflected on what her unit had accomplished. They had successfully rescued 43 hostages, prevented a massive environmental disaster, and eliminated an entire terrorist cell that had been specifically planning to counter their capabilities. More importantly, they had proven once again that superior training, exceptional skill, and perfect teamwork could overcome any challenge. The terrorists had studied their previous operations and had prepared elaborate countermeasures, but Sarah's team had adapted and succeeded anyway. Control, this is Overwatch. Platform is secure, all hostages are safe, terrorist threat is eliminated. Mission accomplished. As the helicopters arrived to evacuate the rescued hostages, Sarah's team gathered on the platform's helicopter landing pad. She could see the satisfaction and pride in their faces as they processed what they had achieved together. Tank approached her as they prepared to depart. "Commander, I owe you another apology. When I heard that this was a trap designed specifically for our team, I had doubts about accepting the mission. But watching you work today, seeing how you systematically dismantled their entire operation, I realized that we weren't walking into a trap. We were bringing one." Similar sentiments were expressed by the other team members as they boarded their extraction helicopter. The men who had once questioned Sarah's leadership now spoke of her with the kind of reverence usually reserved for legendary military figures. Rodriguez summed up the team's feelings as they flew back to base. "Commander, in 18 months under your leadership, we have successfully completed some of the most challenging missions in special operations history. Today proved that there is no tactical situation we cannot handle as long as we trust your judgment and execute your plans." As Sarah looked out at the Gulf of Mexico below, she knew that her team had become something truly special. They were no longer just 8 individual operators following orders from a female commander. They had evolved into a perfectly coordinated unit where gender was completely irrelevant compared to proven ability and demonstrated leadership. The debates about women in combat roles would undoubtedly continue throughout the military and in political circles. But for Sarah's team, those debates had been settled definitively by their performance in real-world operations where lives depended on their skills and coordination. Sarah had proven that exceptional leadership and extraordinary marksmanship could overcome any challenge, regardless of the gender of the person pulling the trigger. Her team had learned to judge their commander not by her appearance or background, but by her ability to bring them home safely after completing impossible missions. As their helicopter approached the base, Sarah was already thinking about their next operation and the continued evolution of the most effective special operations unit in the Navy. They had faced skepticism, overcome prejudice, and proven their capabilities against the most dangerous enemies imaginable. But, most importantly, they had learned to trust each other completely, creating the kind of unbreakable bond that made truly great military units legendary. Sarah Chun and her team had become exactly what the modern military needed. Proof that excellence recognizes no boundaries except those imposed by skill, courage, and dedication to mission success.